Hey guys, another true story from our little book here. This was pretty cool, so you have to listen intently a little bit because there's a lot of names and stuff, but I think you'll like it. Edwin Thomas had a genuine genius for Shakespearean tragedy, so the drama critics have said for over a century. With whom might we compare him today? Olivier, Burton, Williamson, Tom Hanks? During the latter half of the 1800s, in the midst of a legion of theatrical challengers, Edwin Thomas had a few rivals. Although he was a wholly competent and versatile actor, this small, slight, dark man with a magnificent voice possessed an uncanny genius for tragedy. How ironic that his own life should have been so marked by it, and that his fame should have been overshadowed, his spirit broken, and his reputation nearly ruined by an occurrence with which he had nothing to do. He died with a letter in his pocket that night that might have set the record straight, but that's the rest of the story. Edwin Thomas made his acting debut at the age of 15 when he played Tressel to his father's Richard III. 2 years later, in New York, Edwin himself took the role of Richard III, but he was not to achieve any real acclaim until after his father's death in 1852. In the years that followed, he met with phenomenal worldwide success. In New York, he performed Hamlet for 100 consecutive nights. In Boston, he quickly overcame his contemporaries. In London, he used the true test of Shakespeare, anticipating by years a similar reform in England. Okay, let me reread that. In London, he used the true text of Shakespeare. He went back to the original source, the original Shakespeare text. That's what they were saying. Anticipating by years a similar reform in England. Edwin had two brothers, John and Junius, who were also actors. Neither was of Edwin's stature, though the three together gave a memorable performance of Julius Caesar at New York's Winter Garden Theater in 1863. The fact that Edwin's brother John took the role of Brutus during that performance is particularly significant when you understand that he was on the brink of organizing a dark conspiracy in real life. Within 2 years, John would quietly enter the rear of a box in a Washington theater and discharge a pistol at the head of Abraham Lincoln. You see, Edwin Thomas's last name was Booth. His less gifted brother, in whom the assassin Brutus was reborn, was John Wilkes Booth. There were two murders on that April night in 1865. The same gunshot that sent a ball deep into Abraham Lincoln's brain somehow sent another into the heart of Edwin Thomas Booth. The great actor's reputation eventually survived his brother's infamy, but his name, Edwin's, was to be obscured by the stigma of his brother John's deed. Shortly after the assassination, a disconsolate Edward retired from the stage to agonize over the question why. When he returned to the stage many years later, the bombast that characterized his earlier style was gone. Some critics say that the quieter, more introspective manner that replaced it singularly foreshadowed the realism of the 20th century acting. But Edwin might have told them differently. He carried with him to his dying day one supreme, secret irony that at last made him one with the tragic characters to whom he confined himself. For Hamlet, Macbeth, and Othello, the strutting was over. The fretting had begun, and a letter made the difference. It was a letter of thanks for an act of courage at the peak of Edwin Booth's career. The actor was waiting on the station platform in Jersey City to board a train one evening when suddenly, without warning, the coach he was about to enter started with a jolt. Edwin turned fast and then broke into a cold sweat. A well-dressed young man nearby, pressed by the crowd, had lost his footing and fallen in between the station platform and the moving train. Alert, Edwin locked one leg around the railing and holding on with one hand, grabbed the boy by the collar and with the other pulled him back to safety. After sighs of relief were exchanged, the lad recognized his rescuer as the famous Edwin Booth. He shook the actor's hand warmly, expressed his gratitude. Edwin smiled and turned away. Edwin did not recognize the admirer whom he had saved. He found out several weeks later in a letter from General Adams Boudreaux, Chief Secretary to General Ulysses S. Grant. He carried that bittersweet letter to his grave. It was as though by some terrible tipping of the scales that Edwin had spared the son of his brother's victim. While one brother had killed the president, the other had saved the life of the president's son, Robert Todd Lincoln. Isn't that amazing? Anyway, I thought that was a cool story. Thought you might like it. So anyway, I love you all. Talk to you later. Bye.